Hi everyone, this is attorney Minhas back with another immigration video, and I'm back with my guest Jill Diwankatera.
Hello.
She was very popular last time, so I brought her back. Welcome.
Thank you for having me here. I'm super excited to talk about the topic today. It's been really interesting, and I don't think a lot of people really know how crazy the asylum process is, and I'd love to, talk about you with some questions I have about it. I've Googled and I did some research on asylum seeking, and while there is a lot of information out there, it's varied. So as always, it's great to have a lawyer on hand, to answer these questions and especially some myths that people might have about the process.
So before you ask me these questions, of course, I'm always ready to answer your questions. Did you know about asylum before you looked it up or
Honestly, I was familiar with refugees, like the concept of refugees coming in and out, but asylum isn't really something talked about. I'm sure if it blows up in social media, I've seen articles, but for the most part, it really isn't, talked about a lot when it really should be, because I think it's an interesting process and it has its almost own set of rules that come with immigration. So I definitely want to learn more about it because I know I haven't, explored that topic before.
I do want to mention that I do have a video on my YouTube channel which talks about affirmative asylum and also defensive asylum, so I do recommend you checking that out.
Definitely.
And to our viewers, I do recommend you check that out as well.
Yeah.
So you can learn about it.
Don't be like me. Do your research. Watch your attorney's videos beforehand.
And before calling me here, look up the video before, we discuss it. But that's okay. I'm glad you picked it up and you looked into it. But, there are some tips that I do talk about because a lot of people get confused. What's affirmative asylum? What's defensive asylum? How do you file for it? What's it about? What's going on? And you'll learn that in the video. I don't want to get into that right now. I do want to answer your questions. I know the last time we made a video, you were actually representing the Generation Z crew out there who's very confused about what's going on. Asylum is still something that is very new to a lot of people. Some people already know about it, and I've actually come across a lot of prospective clients who ask questions like, what is it? I heard my friend talking about it or someone down the street mentioning it. What is it? And it's like, no one really knows. It's just like hush hush, but I do think it's something that we should talk about so the public is aware of what their options are.
Absolutely. And coming from a generation that really values, political movement and, campaigns and all, I think it's so important to understand asylum because it is not just like your typical immigration. You just don't go in, you check a box, I need asylum. It is so much more than that. It's so intense. It's so intricate. So I think like if you're, a young Gen Z person who wants to know more about immigration, asylum is a must know.
Yes, absolutely. Especially if you're out of status too.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have friends who probably talk about it who are out of status on their F1 visas, or even like, something happens to their H1Bs. I'm sure there's just so many questions and like, am I eligible for asylum? Right? You never know. You can, I always mention this, I say this in a lot of my videos. Get yourself, your case evaluated. Find out if you're eligible. Find out if you meet the requirements for asylum. So
know your options.
Yeah, know your options. And this is the best place to come. So we're going to discuss that today. And today's topic is very interesting. I do want to mention that Jill here today is going to be asking questions. And she's going to ask, is this a myth? Or is this the real deal? Like, what's going on? And I thought that was interesting. So I'm like, hey, let's do another video. And this time we'll talk about asylum.
Right. I mean, with all the misinformation that's out there, it's important to just, cut through all of that and make sure what you have is fact and it's verified.
Yes, exactly. All right. So
on that note, my first, myth is that I've been seeing online is that it's actually easy to apply for asylum as long as the asylum claim is credible. And that's it. That's all you really need. Is that true?
That is partially true, although access to the application, which is called the I-589, is easy. You can get that on the USCIS website. It's easy to file because if you could just fill out the application and, just put in your details, mention whatever claim that you had, you have to show past persecution, and you can show well-founded fear of future persecution. I do recommend working with an attorney if this is not something you should be doing on your own. Especially with our firm, what we would like to do is we like to evaluate the claim, and we like to work with the client to see what type of evidence they have to support the claim for asylum, and then file it. Because, again, back to my main point, if it's an affirmative asylum, it's going to go before a USCIS officer.
Right.
And if it's a defensive asylum, you're going to be seeing a judge. So you want to make sure you have everything in line. There might be some discussions you can have with the attorney to see what other, documentation you can gather. And, a lot of times people also say, oh, well, I fled from my country. I have nothing.
Yeah.
Trust me, there's always something that you can talk about or you can present in your asylum claim. And, see where you can go from there. So, it's partially easy to apply for, but it's recommended that you work with an attorney, especially because you want to make sure that your case is articulated correctly.
Right.
I know so many people have all these facts and they don't have the timeline correct, or they're just talking about, oh, this happened to me and that happened to me and I was beaten and I was, but you want to make it easy for the officer, for the judge to understand in chronological order what happened.
Right.
So that's what I can basically tell you. Yeah, it's easily accessible that you can file for it. There's no fee, by the way. There's no filing fee for the asylum application, but eventually down the line, you are eligible to get a work permit.
Right. And do you think, in your opinion, from the cases you've seen or you've even worked on, do you see a lot of asylum claims get accepted easily by the USCIS?
No, they're not easily accepted because sometimes a lot of people don't understand that you have, a 1-year deadline to file the asylum claim since you've entered the United States. And if you don't file it within the 1-year deadline, then you need to see whether you meet an exception.
Right.
And your claim has to be very extreme. Let's talk about the Afghanistan situation with the Taliban. It has to be extreme. These are cases that are going on right now. And for you to be eligible and granted asylum.
Yeah.
And if the USCIS officer sees that, I can't really, give this person asylum, they refer you to immigration court by giving you a notice to appear.
Got it. See, I didn't know that. I feel like you can file for asylum at any point you feel like, you need the visa. But to know that there's deadline and then there's the dependence on severity is really interesting.
I do want to mention that asylum is not a visa.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. No, that's all right. It is a status that you get. And then we can talk about later, I'm sure you're going to have more questions on what you do and how does that convert into a green card.
Okay.
Okay?
Right.
Okay.
So on that note, I was reading a little bit more about this concept of catch and release. I was a little bit confused on that. First of all, I was confused on that, but then also how it relates to asylum seekers in terms of are they supervised when they enter this country? How does that process work for them?
That's very interesting. So I'm just going to generally talk about catch and release is when someone comes to the border and they are caught and then released back into their home country. Catch and release doesn't really have to do with asylum, but there are situations where catch and release happens and then someone comes into the country and then files for asylum. That's a possibility. It can happen. But the supervision part, it depends. If you are detained, sometimes you are released and you're given a document that says you're going to show up to all of your court appearances when you go before the judge, and you are going to give us your address, and you understand that if you ever move from this location, that you're going to notify us. And sometimes ICE requires you to check in with them.
I see. Okay.
So there is usually in the beginning they were doing a lot of check-ins where you have to show up at the field office and have them sign off that they saw you. But lately they've also been doing telephone check-ins where they give you a cell phone and that's how you virtually check in.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so that's how they're supervised.
Right.
But there are people out there who are not supervised, and those individuals have sign off and say that they're going to appear in court.
That's super important to consider when you're filing for this claim. You have to be able to be in touch with these officers when they need you to. You're not just like signing off a form and you're good to go. There's a lot of lengthy process that's involved with that.
Yeah, there is, but there's a lot of people who don't follow the rules and they go MIA, and I do recommend that, you know, if you're one of those people, that you should sit down with an attorney as soon as possible.
And it's nothing like harmful, you know, they're not out to get you, I'm assuming. They're really just trying to keep track of, you know, the asylum seekers that are here. And,
yeah, just to make sure that, you know, they get their case through and everything is intact and go from there. Because, you know, if you do have an asylum claim and you happen to lose it, a lot of people think, oh, we're just going to be deported at that hearing. No, another part of that is that you have 30 days to file an appeal with the Board of Immigration Appeals and we, you know, fight your chance there, saying that, you know, the judge made an error in my case, so would you, you know, look into it. So you do have that opportunity. It's not like someone's just going to cuff you and take you away. So I know a lot of people are scared about that.
Right. Yeah. That's why I wanted to address it really quickly, because it's like you hear certain keywords and you feel like, okay, this sounds like it could be harmful, but you never know. A lot of the time it is just, you know, paperwork. And
exactly.
Okay. My third question, I guess, / myth, I don't know if it's myth, but I was really interested about learning, is if illegal immigrants in the United States, they can't apply for asylum, can they?
They can.
Okay.
You even if you're in this country and you crossed over and you want to apply for asylum, you can apply for asylum. It's not like you can't.
Right.
It's not just for people who entered on a B2 visa or F1 visa. It can apply to also individuals, because if you think about it, a lot of individuals also flee their home country to come into the United States, and generally they don't come on visas.
Right.
You know, they cross over the border and they're like, listen, I'm fearful for my life. I want to file this claim. So even if you're an illegal immigrant, you know, I don't like using that word. I like to call them foreign nationals. Okay. I don't even like the word alien. You know, everybody, they're individuals, they're human beings just like us. So I like to use foreign nationals. So if the foreign national is in this country, they can go ahead and file an asylum claim. Yeah,
it just goes back to our, you know, when we started off and we were talking about you have to know your options. Like for illegal immigrants, you might, I'm sorry, I don't want to use that word. But like as you said, foreign nationals who might not know what their options are and they might be living in more fear than knowledge. It's important to know that that is also an option for them.
Yes, definitely sit down with an attorney to go over what has happened to you in your home country, or, you know, if there's any changed country conditions. There's a lot of countries that have been dealing with a lot of issues, you know, with politics, with war, with, obviously, you know what's going on in the world right now. You know, it's really unfortunate, but there's been a lot of issues in a lot of countries, and if you can't go back, then you might be eligible to file for asylum.
That's definitely good to know. So now my next question is about, you know, once you are an asylum seeker, you know, can you apply for a green card if you're an asylee?
You can. So once you're granted the asylum, you have to pretty much show that you have been physically present in the United States for a year after that you received your asylum status. And there's other requirements as well that you need to show. And then, yes, you can adjust into a green card. And you can get a green card through the asylum process. And that's why typically a lot of people like asylum, because there is a path to a green card and then eventually a path to citizenship. But of course, you know, if you do get the green card, everything goes well, then you have to wait 5 years until you file for citizenship. But there is an exception if you are married to a U.S. citizen spouse. For 3 years, they've been a U.S. citizen for 3 years, and you're, you know, living with them. Then you may be able to apply under the 3-year rule. So even if you're an asylum holder and you got your green card that way, but if you're married to a U.S. citizen and you meet the 3-rule requirement, you can become a citizen.
I think that's really great to know, because I truly did not know. I feel like, you know, a lot of the times, especially as someone, you know, who is just learning about this through the internet, you feel like options are very limited and they kind of just stay at where they are. If you apply for asylum, you stay as asylum for like as long as you need to. So it's good to know that you have a pathway to, you know.
You do have a pathway, and a lot of people do get asylum status indefinitely. That is a stamp that you do get on your I-94. But yes, you do have a path to a green card. And I do recommend, like, you know, if you have that option, go for it. Like, you know, get that done, get it filed. And if you have any questions, if it gets confusing, you can always reach out to an immigration attorney.
Okay.
Yeah.
Know your options and know your resources.
Absolutely.
So,
can I mention one more thing?
Oh, yeah,
though?
absolutely.
So if you get asylum status and you have a spouse or a child under 21 overseas, you can also file for them to come here under the asylee status.
Okay.
Yeah. So you have that option as well, by the way. So that's before you obtain your green card.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
but there's a time limit on that, so when you find out, when you actually get the grant and you have the asylee status, you should reach out to an attorney and make sure you're ready to file, because there is a time limit for that. Mm-hmm.
Good. All right. Yeah, that's a really important detail to know.
Yeah, because you're going to want your family here,
Right. Timing is everything.
Of course, yeah.
And then speaking of overseas, that actually pertains to my last question I had about asylum seeking. Can asylum seekers apply for asylum if they're from overseas?
So I guess your question is, can you be in another country and apply for asylum?
Yes.
No.
Ooh.
The answer is no. You must be on U.S. soil to apply for asylum.
Okay.
So you cannot claim it if you're outside of the United States. You must be on U.S. territory to apply for asylum.
So if you have somebody who's fleeing from danger while they're in their current country, they would not be able to apply for asylum?
No, not until they get here.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of people get confused. I've had people reach out to me and say, Poonam, can we apply for asylum? You cannot. You cannot from your home country. You're still there.
Right.
If you do apply for asylum, I also do want to mention that it's confidential.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's going to make its way back to your home country where, you're going to be even more fearful of persecution, and then just going to be a big mess. A lot of people do actually come into the United States as a refugee.
Okay.
So let's do a little bit of a homework thing, right? So let's look up refugee. And let's look up what asylum is, now that you can't apply for it from your home country. And then we're going to probably come back with another video using that. And then you tell me what you think and how that applies. But a lot of people have come from outside of the, United States into the United States as refugees.
Okay.
Okay. So that's different.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the times people might be confusing the two words, but they're two completely different statuses.
Yes. Because you're coming into the country as a refugee versus applying for asylum, actually getting it, and then becoming an asylee.
Got it.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
No, I feel like you've done such a great job at answering any questions. But if the viewers have any questions, feel free to send them in. I feel like it's a huge, question for everybody. It has so many intricate details to it, and I'm sure there can be so many more questions about the process. So definitely, if you feel like I missed out on anything, you can obviously email Poonam and let her know about what questions you have about asylum seeking.
So I do always recommend that if you have general questions, you can drop them below. But anything that's particular to your case, I do not recommend that you use the comment section. Instead, you write to me at the email that's been provided, or you can give me a call and schedule a consultation to discuss further. And don't worry, consultations are confidential and they are not going to be disclosed, so you don't have to worry about that, and we can go from there.
Wonderful.
All right, well, I just want to say thank you, Jill, for joining us today.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Great questions, by the way, I must say.
I like to think I did my research.
Well, you did, and I want to ask you one last thing. How do you feel now after you ask these questions? Do you feel a lot more educated?
Yes, absolutely. I feel like, again, it's so easy to Google these things and, think that you know everything about there is to know about asylum. But at the same time, you can't have the same answers and the same research that an attorney who has through lived experience. So I'm really grateful that I have that as a resource, and I can use that as advice and refer to an attorney when I need to friends, families, whoever needs it. So I definitely feel a lot more educated and knowledgeable about the resources I have.
Oh, great. I'm happy about that. All right, guys, thank you for joining us, and we'll be back soon with another video on immigration law in the United States. Catch us again soon. Take care. Be well.
Bye.
Bye.